Not a single European leader condemned the racist and genocidal chants against Palestinians and Arabs. At the same time that this is happening, a statistic was released confirming that the majority of the individuals who are killed in Gaza are between 5 and 9 years old. It's not normal to kill 5-year-olds every single day for a year. There's only so many ways that you can articulate that burning children is wrong. We have to consider the media's role in Israel's atrocity crimes and their liability for it.
They instigated all of the terrorism, then tried to play the victim. These are patterns that they are repeating. And the only difference is we don't rely on traditional media for our information anymore.
Israel admitted that it was depopulating the northern part of Gaza. You're talking about the theft, again, of the homes and lands of hundreds of thousands of people who themselves mostly are refugees. The formal announcement of the Nakba. Hello and welcome to episode 134 of the Palestine Pod, the weekly podcast where we break down the latest headlines linked with Palestine from all over the world and bring you stories, commentary, and interviews with the aim of supporting the Palestinian struggle for decolonization, justice, and equal rights. I'm one of your hosts, Lara E. You might know me from Instagram as @GazanGirl, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mikey B.
What's up, y'all? Mikey B on TikTok, Michael Schertzer on Instagram. And you can call me Mikey Intifada if you took a little dip in the canals in Amsterdam.
Before we get into today's episode, please like, comment, subscribe if you hang out with us on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast tab, subscribe and leave a review. As always, you can find our full episodes and sources on PalestinePod.com. And if you want to get involved in the conversation, reach out to us at PalestinePod@gmail.com and give us a follow on Instagram @ThePalestinePod. You can also find us on Patreon, where you get early access to the Palestine Pod episodes and additional podcasts per week. And we're also hosting our monthly Zoom happy hours with our Patreon subscribers only. So check us out on patreon.com/PalestinePod. Do we want to talk about Amsterdam?
I do.
Okay.
I love what happened.
Look, I want to talk about it, but I'm like, are we being distracted with it?
I don't think it's a distraction. And I actually have something to say about it that I haven't seen elsewhere. But let's give a recap, right? There's a soccer team called the Maccabees that is based in the occupation. And they sent a contingent of fans as well as Mossad agents and other unseemly people to Amsterdam. And the day before, they had jumped a taxi driver, these Zionists. They had ripped down Palestinian flags that people were displaying in their properties in Amsterdam. They were seen on camera chanting, "Go IDF, kill all the Arabs. There are no schools in Gaza because there are no children in Gaza." And they did all this with police presence. And then after the game and after all of these, attacks on the Arab and Muslim community in Amsterdam, there was a contingent of Moroccans and Turkish folks and people who are diaspora who met up with the Zionists and gave them a little talking to.
The chant is "Ole, ole, ole, let the IDF win and fuck the Arabs. Ole, 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 why is school out in Gaza? There are no children left there." That is verbatim the chant.
Yeah, so real poetic stuff that they were chanting out there with police presence. But then when they weren't surrounded by police, the consequences of their actions caught up with them. There was one instance of a Zionist who was thrown into the canals. And this became kind of like a national emergency. They put out bulletins. They sent a rescue team. They were, all hands on deck because he was in the sea, apparently. The media tried to, the Western media tried to frame this as like an anti-Semitic attack. And you saw politicians who are bought off by Zionist lobbyists from all over the West started their condemnation tour, right? They were putting out tweets. They were putting out Facebook posts. They were doing what they always do.
Yeah. Can I just give some examples? So Joe Biden, who is still
Is he still alive?
He's still going. Tweeted, "The anti-Semitic attacks on Israeli soccer fans in Amsterdam are despicable and echo dark moments in history when Jews were persecuted." New York Times coverage of this ran a headline with similar messaging only to find that when you actually read the article, there was no single example of anything anti-Semitic being said or done, i.e., that these people were targeted because they were Jewish. Instead, the article contained in itself clear evidence of the fact that these so-called soccer fans were expressly making anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian statements for hours and days before they were met with people challenging them. And there's a complete disconnect between the actual content of the article and how the headline framed what was happening. And you saw this happen all over. You even saw Sky News accidentally release fair coverage of the incident only to delete the post, re-upload it to have it be biased in favor of the Zionist messaging, and then have it be deleted again and then re-upload it again in an even more biased manner. I mean, they were all over the place. They couldn't bear to have just a moment's worth of fair messaging out there, that they crumbled, under all the pressure and immediately deleted it. And everybody, of course, was watching the deletion and watching the re-uploads, being like, what is going on here? And comparing what was previously uploaded with what was, re-uploaded. I think Francesca Albanese said that not a single European leader condemned the so-called soccer fans' racist and genocidal chants against Palestinians and Arabs. Not a single one. And that is what was recorded on camera. And that's what we have evidence of. And that's also the same exact messaging that after they were rescued by so-called Mossad agents who came to pick them up in airplanes and they landed back in Israel, they're getting off the plane, they are singing that same song, that there's no school in Gaza because they've killed all the children. So these so-called traumatized soccer fans, once they arrived back, they had enough energy to muster to let out one more genocidal song, right?
Yeah. Hey, they got their ass beat, or as the New York Times would call it, just a minor clash. Yeah, so the commentary that I have not seen circulating, Avigdor Lieberman, the foreign minister, released this quote. He said, "I urge the Jews of Europe not to wait as many did on the eve of the Holocaust. Leave everything and come to Israel." A lot of people have been talking about what happened and like the poor coverage by the media, but not a lot of people are talking about the why. Like, why did this happen? I believe that the why of this event was to scare Jews in Europe into immigrating to the occupation. And there is a history of them doing these type of things. The reason that many Jews were kicked out of Iraq, kicked out of Yemen, kicked out of Tunisia is because Zionists used to instigate terrorist attacks in those places, right? And then the media would do the same thing that they're doing, where they're like, it's not safe for the Jews. All the Jews have to leave. And so they're doing that again, but they tried to run the same playbook as when there wasn't social media, right? Because there wasn't anybody who was in Iraq who could tweet at the time like, no, these Zionists actually came in and blew stuff up. But now we have the evidence that that's exactly what they did. They instigated all of the terrorism. They instigated all of the confrontations and then tried to play the victim. They actually couldn't even host an event honoring the Kristallnacht, which, if many people don't know it, it's the night of broken glass where Jews were attacked in pogroms by Nazis, by Nazi sympathizers. They couldn't commemorate that in Amsterdam because they were concerned that Israelis would attack those Jews. Guys, you're the Nazis now. These are patterns that they are repeating. And the only difference is we don't rely on traditional media for our information anymore. If the people, and I think that there are some people who do, and those people are probably still confused about what happened in Amsterdam, right? Because the media purposefully framed these confrontations as anti-Semitism when anybody who knows anything about it knows that it has nothing to do with them being Jewish and everything to do with them chanting, "There are no schools in Gaza because there are no children." That's the type of thing that you get your ass beat for. And it's street justice, which comes a little bit quicker than court justice.
Let me just rebound on what you said about Zionist attacks across the Arab world, which were intended to drive Jewish Arabs to colonize Palestine. So this is something that historian Avi Schleim has written about extensively. He's a British Israeli historian, and in his memoir, he refers to the fact that Mossad carried out bombings to drive Jews out of Iraq and to hasten their transfer to Israel. He documents attacks that took place in the 1950s on Iraqi Jews, and in his book, he refers to undeniable proof of Zionist involvement in those terrorist attacks, which prompted a mass exodus of Jews from Iraq between 1950 and 1951. And these attacks were, according to Avi Schleim, carried out by the Mossad, Israel's spy agency. And wouldn't you know it, Israel has confirmed that they have sent Mossad agents to Amsterdam to attend this match.
Another resource that you can read about the disconnection of Arab Jews from their homeland is When We Were Arabs, Masoud Hayyoun. We had him on the pod years ago. It was like episode 12. And he talked about these terrorist attacks that were done by Zionists with the express purpose of incentivizing Jewish people to leave their homelands and become settlers.
And this is not disputed, right? We know this. This is you can look this up. So there were Mossad agents amongst those soccer fans that were pulling up wooden planks, from the street and using it to create destruction and mayhem. And we have a lot of this on film, thanks also in part to a local Dutch journalist, a young boy of about 15 or 16 years old.
13. He's 13.
He's 13. Okay. And he broadcast, I think, 20 some minutes of, raw footage of these attacks, at which point one of the Zionists came to him and said, "Stop recording for your own safety." And he said, "No, I won't." And he kept recording, and then he uploaded it. And you see exactly this sort of thing play out with them instigating and just terrorizing the streets of Amsterdam. And then after that, you even had the Amsterdam police in a press conference that was publicized around the world, confirmed that violence was instigated by these Israeli club supporters. And this is crazy because once you even have like local police confirming it, and then the media narrative stays what it is, you see just to what extent the media is willing to go to create a story to paint Zionists as victims wherever they are, and to paint them as victims because of their so-called Jewishness, and how nobody is stopping to think like maybe it's the fact that they're singing songs prideful of the fact that there's quote unquote no children left, no schools left in Gaza. Like nobody's thinking that's the problem. And it's that blind spot which is just enraging. Like they're allowed to say that, and we are supposed to say absolutely no problem, great job guys. And if we have any opposition to that, our opposition must be driven by the fact that we don't like their religion, or we're bigoted or prejudiced against them for their religion, not for the fact that they gloat about killing children, and that they are killing children. Every single day that this fiasco has been entertained in media, they have been killing Palestinians in Gaza. The killing does not end, right? We're day 400 of this genocide, and every day new Palestinian children are being massacred by Israel in Gaza. So it's not just words, right? It's words accompanied with the action, combined with impunity, no accountability, right? So it's that combination of things that obviously is going to enrage people of conscience. And when they see these individuals come to their city and tear down Palestinian flags and beat up cab drivers and, create destruction in the street, and then chant anti-Palestinian songs bragging about how there's no children left in Gaza, you think that maybe the problem is that, and not the fact that they're being targeted because of their identity. But that's just unfathomable to the mainstream media, that's the problem. And that just goes to show you how far anti-Palestinian racism and dehumanization is drilled into the mainstream media. And I just want to say, at the same time that this is happening, a statistic was released confirming that the majority of the age group of the individuals who are killed in Gaza are between 5 and 9 years old. 5 and 9 years old. So not only is it a genocidal army that brags about killing children, they have succeeded in ensuring that children are the number one victims of their genocide. As I said back in October 2023, this is going to be remembered as the genocide of Palestinian children. That is what is going to be remembered as historically, because that is the number one victim of Israel's campaign.
And as a Jew traveling through Europe who has not chanted death to Arabs and so glad that there's no Palestinian children, I'm having a fine time. I haven't been beaten up. I haven't been accosted. Somebody said that this is a real indictment of Krav Maga. How do you have Mossad agents by your side and you still get your ass beat? Aren't those guys supposed to be like good at fighting? But it just goes to show you that even their Mossad is just used to shooting people who are turned around. Like they're used to sending robots to kill people. They don't understand combat, like hand-to-hand combat. And that's why they avoid it. The occupation put out a bulletin where they're like, we discourage anybody from any Zionist, any Israeli from traveling to Amsterdam. And it's like, oh no, what a punishment. What will the people of Amsterdam do except enjoy peace and quiet without anti-Palestinian racism? Don't tempt me with a good time. But that bulletin underscores what they were trying to do, which is like create this atmosphere of fear, right? They were trying to strike fear into the hearts of Jewish people all over Europe and get them to immigrate to the occupation because they are hemorrhaging people. People are leaving in the hundreds of thousands. People are no longer living in the north. Metula is a ghost town, right? These people are not going to come back, and that's what they have said. And so they're trying to recruit new bodies.
So I saw this clip of Ori Goldberg, former academic. He's a PhD. He's Israeli, and he gives a lot of insight into Israeli society. And he was speaking on Al Jazeera, and I thought what he was saying, I think everybody needs to understand. He said that Israelis are confused that they are arriving in Amsterdam and they are carrying out this, they're behaving in this way by pulling down the Palestinian flags, by chanting these genocidal chants, and they're confused that they're not being received as heroes, right? Because for them, they're fighting what they consider to be an existential threat, not only for themselves, but for the entire world, right? And so they're just confused that they're not being received as heroes when they, rampage and riot through Amsterdam and commit this criminal genocidal behavior. So he says this is a major part of the Israeli condition at the moment, a detachment between actions and consequences.
It was the splash heard round the world.
He goes on to say that Israeli Jewish society believes that they are simply under threat for existing in the same space as Palestinians and that they are perennial victims. He says, what we do, we must do because we do it as a part of self-defense or fighting the good fight. And if anybody doesn't realize that, that's their problem. And we're not subject to laws and rules like everyone else. He's speaking on behalf of the society, right? He obviously doesn't espouse any of these beliefs. He says the collective Israeli psyche can be characterized by this sense of rightful impunity. So not only can we get it, can we commit genocide, but we can get away with it and we can brag about it wherever we go in the world. And you guys have to cheer for us because we're heroes for committing this genocide. And we just had no other choice. And when we go anywhere in the world to brag about what we've done, we must be received as heroes because we had to do, we did what we simply had to do. This is a very dangerous psyche. It's an extremely dangerous psyche. And it's also no surprise that it manifests in this way when they leave the genocide that they're committing, right? Because if you think that you're entitled to commit genocide, you're entitled to kill children, you're entitled to brag about killing children and turn it into songs. Not only songs, that are at the periphery of your culture, but that are at the center of your identity. That's going to go with you wherever you go in this world. So these people are not only dangerous in Palestine, but they're dangerous anywhere else that they go in this world because they have at their core this sense of nothing can restrain my behavior. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to follow any laws. I'm forever protected by, decades of impunity for Israel's crimes. And I don't see how anyone can look at that and not understand that it's a recipe for disaster.
And it reminds me of the Golda Meir quote where she said, "We can forgive the Arabs for killing our children, but we can never forgive them for forcing us to kill their children." And I typed that into Google, and that has been posted on the Israel subreddit at least 20 times. And I'm talking October 2023, March 2016, June 2023, April 2024, literally all of them reposted. And then I also found a article from 1990 that is an opinion piece in the Washington Post that says, "No one is forcing Israel to kill children."
It's crazy because it's this complete lack, as Ori Goldberg says, complete lack of accountability for their own actions. They commit the most heinous crimes, and it doesn't matter because they're never to be held accountable for it. And it's never their fault when they do it. It's our fault for making them do it. It's our fault for making them kill us. I was talking to my aunt on the phone today, and I just said to her that I'm getting to this point of the gaslighting where it's becoming so difficult to function. You're just seeing how this entire thing played out in the media. You're getting to the point where they are bragging, and it is on camera, about killing Palestinian children. In parallel, they have killed thousands of Palestinian children. Just get to a point where you realize that everybody wants you dead and is doing it. And you can't even speak about how you'd rather live without provoking these completely baseless allegations over and over and over again. Francesca Albanese tweeted, we have to consider the media's role in Israel's atrocity crimes and their liability for it. Because if it would suit Israel, the media would print that, the sky was red and would have everyone believe it, even if it wasn't. And we're all saying it's blue, and they would say, no, it's absolutely red, and you're an anti-Semite for saying it's blue. It's gotten to the point where it doesn't matter if you have it on camera, if you have the genocidal chance on camera. And you say, no, but look what they're saying, and look what they're saying when they got back to Israel. Look what they're shouting in the street. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Nobody cares because the genocide of Palestinian children is so normalized. It's so expected that to challenge it for them is the shocking thing. It's not shocking to commit genocide against children. It's shocking to brag about it. It's not shocking to brag about it when you're in Gaza. It's not shocking to go to another country and brag about it. And who was it? Bari White that tweeted, "Oh, I'm sorry we let you down," and then put a picture of Anne Frank, and then somebody retweeted, "Yeah, Anne Frank was."
I literally
There you
have it
go.
loaded. It was Neo Berg who tweeted, "It's happening again. I'm so sorry." And then somebody else tweeted, I believe his name is Sean. I don't see the full. A picture of Anne Frank saying, "I'm so sorry. It's happening again." And then somebody on Twitter, Sean, said, "We all remember when Anne Frank left the attic to go to a soccer stadium and lead death to Arab chants." Anti-Semitism is now when you're not allowed to scream death to Arabs, apparently. Shira Talpez, snark academic, tweeted, "Historically speaking, pogroms didn't begin with hooligans yelling racist threats, making fun of dead children, and ripping down flags." And then David Grossman tweeted, "We're talking about the fan base with the second highest number of recorded racist incidents in the 2023 report. The report also notes that fans are not deterred from violating Israel's laws against racist chanting, largely because the laws were not enforced." Lady B N Dip, who said, "Last night was a terrible indictment of Krav Maga." And it's truly you have guys who served in the occupation army who literally just got beat up by a bunch of lads from Amsterdam. It's not like the guys who encountered them are militarily trained. They're not the counter attack to the occupation hooligans These guys are not like trained military. They are just guys who are sick at the idea that their city is being invaded by these fucking terrorists and terror supporters who are so openly bragging about committing a genocide against mostly children. This is a very normal and natural response.
So we're now 400 days into Israel's genocide in Gaza. On day 398, Israel admitted that it was depopulating the northern part of Gaza and indicated that it would expand its depopulation to Beit Lahia. They waited until the US elections took place before they announced that they were going to commit to ethnic cleansing and Nakba for the northern part of Gaza. This, of course, comes as no surprise to Palestinians who, since the very beginning, have been urging the world to pay attention to the fact that this was going to be a new Nakba. And in fact, Israeli leaders themselves never hid this, because as early as October 2023, they were already announcing that this was the Nakba of Gaza. What the North has been facing in the last month or so has been a very intense attack towards the hundreds of thousands of residents who have remained steadfast in their homes, undergoing sniper attacks, starvation, bombardments, and the complete restriction on any form of humanitarian aid, medicine, food, or the entry of NGOs into the area to assist. No humanitarian aid at all has entered the northern part of Gaza for over a month now. And today I saw photos of Palestinians in Jabalia who were injured from Israeli bombardment, waiting for anyone to come take them to be treated. And of course, the post indicated that there was no civil defense that was going to be able to rescue these people. And the photos are really harrowing. People are alive but slowly dying. And it remains to be seen exactly how this will play out after the announcement by the army that Palestinians would not be allowed to return to the northern part of Gaza. They released another statement saying, oh, no, that's not correct. It was taken out of context. But it's really just clear that they know that, this is not being received well. And so they'll just issue out a correction, even though they'll keep doing the same thing, but it doesn't actually mean anything. And it's very clear that the attempt is to get as many people out of the northern part of Gaza, direct them south, and keep doing the same thing over and over and over again until you concentrate them into as small a piece of land as possible. And this is the pattern that we have been warning the world about for over a year now. And so just to see it play out now, everyone should absolutely resist this. And there are still hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in their homes in the northern part of Gaza. The attempt to depopulate northern Gaza. There has been a mass movement of Palestinians out of the northern part of Gaza further south. We've seen that in a lot of videos, but there are still people there who are remaining steadfast, and we have to do everything that we can to support them and to absolutely unequivocally resist any Nakba in the northern part of Gaza, or any indication or any suggestion that will become a closed military zone, a buffer zone, a place for settlement for new, Jewish settlers that are planning their, that are just so thrilled and just planning their settlement already. They're already looking at, buying real estate, and they've incorporated real estate companies, and they're just completely detached from reality. So it's just really hard to see these types of announcements be made as if they are matter of fact, inevitable, just sort of declarations, that are made in just a context of war. Oh yeah, northern Gaza now is done. Nobody will be allowed to return. You're talking about the theft, again, of the homes and lands of hundreds of thousands of people who themselves mostly are refugees. You already stole their homes and lands, and you put a state on it, and you never let them go back. And you never paid them compensation for the stolen homes and lands that they were expelled from in 1948. They rebuilt their lives in any event in Gaza, and they tried to live normal lives as much as possible, despite the fact that they lived for decades in a concentration camp. And just to have that announcement that you're going to do the same thing to them that same injustice again, as if it's nothing, as if it's just another day, without acknowledging it for what it is. It is the biggest catastrophe. It is something that can literally make you choke, like just from how deep it punctures my soul to know that this is where we are 400 days into this. The formal announcement of the Nakba, of Gaza, of the northern part of Gaza, and just to see them continue to get away with it. You know, I had dreams, and I still have dreams, of going back to my grandmother's childhood home there. And it doesn't exist anymore, of course, the house. And I don't know if I could even find where it actually was because the entire neighborhood is gone. But just to know that they can commit these crimes and get away with them, and I'm supposed to sit here and just act like it's nothing. I'm supposed to restrain my emotions because if I dare have an emotional outburst, then I'll be seen as crazy. But who of us would be willing to have their home and land stolen multiple times, generation after generation after generation? Nobody can process that amount of loss and destruction and annihilation of a people and a society and a history and a future without going absolutely mad. And the fact that Palestinians continue to try to send their kids to makeshift schools in tents because they continue to insist on the value of education in a society and a world that doesn't want them. I don't know what the world wants from us. What else does the world want from us? I don't know what is the right way to articulate opposition to annihilation and to extermination that will be acceptable for the Western world, the politicians and the mainstream media. I don't know what is the right way to convince people that it's not normal to kill 5-year-olds every single day for a year. And that when we have feelings that say, no, this isn't right, this isn't normal, please stop doing this to us, please stop doing this to our children, that's just the natural human response to unexplainable amounts of human tragedy. And yet, 400 days into genocide, we are still being accused of anti-Semitism. That is unforgivable. What else do you want from us? You've taken everything. You've taken everything. Time and again, generation after generation. My grandfather grew up with the original Nakba. My parents grew up in the time of the Naksa. I was born around the time of the Intifada, and I grew up around the time of the Second Intifada. And now I'm an adult during the Unity Intifada and the genocide in Gaza. What else does the world want from us? You know, I've gotten to the point where I can't speak. I choke. I choke when I start I don't like I cannot you know, if people have been listening to the Palestine pod for a few years now, they may think, oh, Lara used to be a lot more articulate before, because I've gotten to the point where I start sentences and I don't even know where the end is. It's just because I'm trying to find new ways to convince people it's wrong. And there's only so many ways that you can articulate that burning children is wrong. And if that doesn't automatically trigger something in you, then I don't know how to explain it to you. I don't know how to convince you. And if I can't convince you, then how do I protect my life and the life of my people and our future as a people? You know, there was an article that started to question whether Palestinian babies have a future in Gaza, because they noted that, well, there's no maternal prenatal care, there's no formula, there's none of the things that you need in order to like have a healthy pregnancy and take care of a newborn or a baby. And so they started to doubt the viability of life for Palestinian babies in all of Gaza from a scientific point of view.
Eugenics. It's Nazi eugenics. And I'd like to read some points from Palestinian martyr Refat al-Harir. These are extremely important points. Number 1, don't spend your time in defense against Zionist propaganda. Number 2, don't spend more time condemning anti-Semitism. We have blanket rejections of all sort of racism. Number 3, never condemn the Palestinian resistance, especially armed struggle. Number 4, there are no both sides here. The occupier and oppressor can always go to hell. Number 5, This is about Palestinian lives.
2 days ago, I saw a Palestinian filmmaker in Gaza was like teaching children how to make movies amidst the rubble of all of their lives and homes. And these kids were interested in learning how to be filmmakers, and he was encouraging them to think about ways to make movies and make documentaries about their experiences and about their lives. And I sat there thinking to myself, what a magnificent people we are, that nothing, absolutely nothing, extinguishes our insistence on life, and that there isn't a more obvious call for freedom for people who continuously insist on life. And it wouldn't matter in any event, right? It wouldn't matter what we were like, right? That was what Ta-Nehisi Coates was saying, was like, my belief that apartheid is wrong has nothing to do with the morality of Palestinians. It's just wrong. They could do anything and it would still be wrong. And I loved that analysis because I think so many Palestinians have become so conditioned into trying to justify why we deserve freedom. And it's like, no, you just deserve freedom because you're human. But and I'm guilty of it too, but on the other hand, I'm also so in awe of us, of our insistence on life, of our commitment to freedom. I'm so in awe of that. I'm so in awe of our insistence on poetry and art and our creativity, and that we're visionaries and that we will always find a way to survive. They destroyed most of the agricultural land in Gaza, but we're still planting and we're still letting the earth feed us. And these things, make me proud of who I am and who we are. So I repeat them so as not to forget them. But I don't want it to be mistaken for a sort of, well, we deserve freedom because we're special. No, we deserve freedom because we're human. And the fact that we continue to show our humanity is extra. It's not the reason why we deserve freedom, right? That really helped me a lot to unpack that sort of reasoning. There's just never going to be an excuse for any of what they do to us. And they always try to convince you that not only is there an excuse, but it's inevitable. And the reality is, it's not inevitable. They're choosing to do it, and it's indefensible. Just in terms of recapping a little bit what they're doing in Lebanon, because I feel like it's not getting enough attention, which strangely, I had thought that once they invaded Lebanon and expanded their genocide to Lebanon, that Gaza would get less attention because Lebanon would get more attention. But what I'm realizing is that Lebanon's getting even less attention, maybe because the world has just accepted Israel committing genocide as just an ordinary, course of events. But we should remember that since they've invaded Lebanon, they have by now killed 3,100 Lebanese people and wounded close to 14,000. Just in the last couple of days, they have bombed Tir, Saida, Baalbek, and Lebanese towns and villages in the south and the Beqa Valley. Lebanese authorities say that 70% of the population of Baalbek has fled the city, and that 1 in 4 Lebanese are displaced since the beginning of the offensive, which began in early October. So it's been a little over a month now. The Hezbollah Secretary General has said that political moves will not end the war and that only the battlefield will deter Israel. So it looks like there's no immediate end in sight.
The occupation has erased 37 villages and destroyed more than 40,000 houses. That said, they've also been trying to invade South Lebanon for many weeks now and have failed. They have failed to take even a single town, a single village in Lebanon, and they've actually been repelled back down to areas like Metula.
But we're seeing them also recreate the same phenomenons in Lebanon that we're seeing that we saw them create in Gaza. So, for example, I saw a video of a child in Lebanon who was being dubbed, one of the first wounded child, no surviving family, which was the acronym that was created in Gaza because of the death and destruction that they committed there, such that they were killing entire families and leaving one surviving child. We also see them dressed up in Lebanese women's lingerie and clothing. They've exported that phenomenon as well, of invading homes and dressing up as, the in the clothing of the displaced individuals, or in some cases the individuals who have been killed, playing with the children's toys and wearing the women's lingerie. We've also seen them detonate entire villages all at once, and that's been recorded. Just widespread destruction of entire villages. And so it's very much, and it's all happening in a very accelerated way. So it's very much, I think, oh, okay, we got away with this pattern, this policy in Gaza, and now we'll just copy paste it to Lebanon. In the meantime, if we go to the West Bank and consider the last couple of days, since Monday of last week, Israel killed 11 Palestinians in the West Bank, including 7 in Jenin, and Israeli settlers took over 5 dunams of Palestinian farmland in the northern Jordan Valley in the West Bank, and Israeli settlers stole Palestinian olive harvest in the village of Yasuf near Salfit in the northern West Bank. So that's business as usual. Every day there's a new story of land theft in the West Bank. And, we haven't talked about the meaning of the presidential election on what we might see for Palestine. But I just want to come out and say that Palestinians know that regardless who is in office, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, that the policy towards Palestine is always the same. The insistence on Zionism as a main focus of American foreign policy doesn't typically budge regardless of who is in office. It's just packaged a little bit differently, but foreign aid to Israel will continue to be a policy. Allowing Israel to commit international crimes will continue to be a policy. It's just a question of what types of specific actions we're going to see. A lot of people have theorized that perhaps this is going to be the moment where Israel will announce formally the annexation of the entire West Bank and Trump will rubber stamp it. Maybe, possibly. Under international law, the West Bank is already annexed to Israel de facto, so a formal announcement of it really wouldn't change things. The reality is that it's already annexed, but that might be something we see. Who knows if Trump will come out with a declaration that Israel has to, quote unquote, end the war. Who knows if that will actually mean that the reality on the ground will change, because I can very much envisage Trump saying, oh, it's over, and, pat himself on the back for being the guy who ended it, when in reality, things stay very much the same and Palestinians continue to be killed on a daily basis. That's a possibility. Because he's very much the kind of guy who wants the credit for ending it, even though it hasn't actually ended, right? That, I think we'll probably see that. But all of this is to say that whatever movement and organizing we were going to do had Kamala Harris won, we have to apply to this scenario as well, because in any case, we're still organizing. In any case, we are still resisting. And in any case, we are still insisting on our internationally recognized rights. And there's really no difference. Actually, I've even heard people say that Palestinians have tried to speak to Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, who apparently is a Lebanese guy, to try to get access to Trump. And I have little to no hope, actually no hope that that's going to lead to anything. But it is interesting to see how people are trying to get access in different ways to see if it will make any difference. The one thing about Trump is that he's extremely unpredictable. And who knows what that might mean. Netanyahu congratulated him and, tweeted very immediately his public, wow, I can't wait for you to be back. And, it's going to be a time for us to reinforce our two nations relations and all of this stuff. But let's not forget also that it's not like this extremely easy relationship between them either. They did have some uncomfortable moments the last time Trump was in office. So I don't know what it will actually mean, but either way, our position is that we must continue to resist on all fronts. So
I've seen Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, and they are affirming what you're saying, which is that no matter who the president is, they will be a Zionist and things will be bad for Palestine. Tangibly, I've heard that Mossad Boulos would become the mediator for Lebanon, and he takes over for Amos Hochstein, who is an Israeli IOF officer. currently the Biden-Harris administration has a former IOF officer who is handling Lebanon negotiations for the Biden administration, and he will be relieved of duty and replaced by a Lebanese-American billionaire who helped Trump get in office. Ultimately, we know that any policy that happens is going to be negative for Palestine. There is one story that I wanted to cover about an Australian-Israeli former diplomat, Mark Regev, who is under trial for genocide advocacy.
Which is not a type of advocacy you want to be associated with.
Also, it's a very strange use of the word advocacy, because advocacy usually means to help people, and so what he's doing is he's helping them commit genocide, right? It's part of how the media is complicit in the way that they talk about genocide supporters. But then again, genocide supporter doesn't really have the same ring as genocide advocacy. After defending Israel's decision to lay a complete siege over Gaza in October 2023, former Netanyahu advisor and UK ambassador Mark Regev is being charged with, quote, advocacy for genocide by Aboriginal activists in his native Australia. This is an article from October 22nd in Haaretz. We want to end on a positive note, right? And that is that these people who are quote unquote advocates for genocide will eventually face consequences, whether it be in Amsterdam or The Hague. Folks, that has been another episode of the Palestine Pod. Thank you all so much for listening. Check out our full episodes and sources at www.palestinepod.com. Follow us on Instagram at @thepalestinepod. Send us an email at palestinepod@gmail.com. And please consider supporting us on Patreon, www.patreon.com/palestinepod. That's been another episode of the pod. Thank you all so much for listening. Have as good a day as you can. Actually, you know what? Based on Amsterdam, I'll say have a good day again.
We can start telling people to join the Patreon. The show wouldn't be possible without a Patreon. You got to get on our Patreon. Support us on Patreon. You can, because like I've been watching all these other podcasts and they just keep plugging Patreon like all the time.
Yeah, I'm going to clip what you just did right now.
Okay.